Wherever he goes, he has something to say. It's usually about the U.S., and it's usually not good. Fresh off a trip to China, firebrand Filipino leader Rodrigo Duterte is in Japan for his first official visit since becoming president. Now, the trip is being closely scrutinized following Duterte's controversial remarks about the U.S. Just days ago, he said that he wanted to, quote, separate his nation's foreign policy from America's and forge closer ties with China and Russia. That has worried leaders in Japan, which is one of the closest allies of the United States. Yeah, how worried should people be? I want to pull in now Doug Bando from the Cato Institute in Washington, D.C. He's an expert on U.S.-Asia policy, and he was a special assistant to former President Ronald Reagan. Sir, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the day tonight. How worried should we be, or how worried are you when you hear statements like this coming from the president of the Philippines?
Well, I'm more perplexed, I think, than worried. I think that the U.S. can get along very well, if the Philippines wants to go its own way. It's a democratic country. The president was elected democratically. It's entitled to make its own choices. He does seem rather erratic. He will say things. His aides will pull them back. One of his strangest statements in Beijing was that he thought that he, Russia, and China could take on the world. My guess is that in Moscow and Beijing, there were some shaking heads. And he's doing this for one of the most pro-American countries, in the world. So I don't know how this is all going to work out for him domestically.
But isn't it? It is troubling, though, when you consider that the Obama administration has really tried to make this pivot to Asia a reality, and now you have a key ally there with a president who basically is saying, you can. It's, my way or the highway.
But the point is, it really is his country. I think the challenge for the U.S. here is, to some degree, the U.S. was pushing the Philippines to take a very aggressive position. The problem is the Philippines essentially doesn't have a military. Its navy is in no shape to confront that of China. So then the question, that the Philippines faces is, to what extent is it willing to go on and confront China? To what extent does it trust the U.S. will back it up? To what extent does the U.S. want to potentially be involved in that kind of confrontation? So I think it's quite reasonable for everybody to rethink policy here. The problem is, President Duterte is not one who seems to think about these things. He seems much more kind of that gut level blurting things out. And so it's not clear that anyone in, at least his presidential administration is thinking a lot about these.
I mean, you could say that he realizes that China is the rising superpower in Asia, and he wants to make sure that he gets on, the gravy train, if you will, while the getting is good. That would seem prudent. What would be your advice then for the next U.S. president, considering that?
Well, my advice for the next U.S. president is basically don't worry and let's see what happens with the next Filipino president. The Philippines remains very pro-American. The last number I saw was like 92%, more than twice the number who had positive feelings towards China. The entire national security establishment is pro-American, very nervous about what he's doing. He's also, shown himself willing to go back and forth, so this might be a short-term thing. He's likely to find the Chinese will give him a very good visit, but they're very tough negotiators. They believe they own the Scarborough Shoal. It's a disputed, piece of rock there. The Philippines would like to get back on. The Chinese probably won't let them. So he may end up being very disappointed in this.
And before I let you go, I have to ask, can you imagine a world with a Filipino President Duterte and a U.S. President Trump, you being a good Republican?
Well, I would add to that, can we imagine a world with a French President Marine Le Pen, and we can play this out. But no, I think you're right. The idea of Duterte and Trump getting together would be quite a spectacle.
All right, well said there. All right, Doug Bando with the Cato Institute in Washington, D.C. Doug, thank you very much. We appreciate you taking the time to talk with us on the day.
Sure. Happy to be on.